Hello and welcome to Hollywood Update. I'm Martin Grove. Our focus today is on Catch a Fire from Focus Features. We'll be talking to its director, Phillip Noyce.
My father always told me, you must find happiness where you can. These were bad times in my country, but I had a good job and a beautiful family.
His family, his work, that's Patrick's life.
Oh, wow. What's that?
Go. We have to ask your husband some questions.
What are you doing?
I've done nothing wrong.
Let him go! Daddy!
Catch a Fire, the new film from Phillip Noyce, the highly acclaimed director of The Quiet American and Clear and Present Danger, tells the powerful story of a South African hero's journey to freedom. Set during the country's turbulent and divided times in the early 1980s and in the new South Africa of today, the film is based on the real-life story of Patrick Chamuso.
I told you 100 times, I'm innocent.
A Focus Features presentation, Catch a Fire stars Tim Robbins, Derek Luke, and Bonnie Henna. The film was produced by Tim Bevan, Eric Fellner, Anthony Minghella, and Robin Slovo, and written by Sean Slovo. Its executive producers are Sidney Pollack, Deborah Hayward, and Liza Chasen. In Catch a Fire, Derek Luke plays Patrick Chamuso, an oil refinery employee and soccer coach who is truly apolitical until he and his wife, played by Bonnie Henna, are falsely accused of a crime they didn't commit.
I am talking to you! Release my wife!
They're released from custody when the security branch police colonel, played by Tim Robbins, finally concludes Patrick is innocent.
He didn't do it. I let him go.
Shocked into action, Patrick reorients his sense of self and purpose.
I promise I will make this right.
And transforms himself into a rebel fighter and political operative, staging daring solo attacks against the country's brutal regime.
My family was punished for nothing, so let it be for something now.
Phillip Noyce, a long-distinguished auteur director, is one of Hollywood's most passionate filmmakers. A native of Australia, Noyce began making films there in the mid-1970s. He went on to direct such films as Dead Calm, Patriot Games, Clear and Present Danger, and The Quiet American. He was honored earlier this year by the Australian Screen Directors Association with a Lifetime Achievement Award. We've taken our cameras today to the beautiful Hotel Bel Air here in West Los Angeles in the Bel Air Hills, and we're talking about the movie Catch a Fire with its director, Phillip Noyce. Phillip, welcome. Glad to see you here.
Good to be here.
Thank you. I enjoyed Catch a Fire so much, and I understand I'm not the only one, because I know you had the world premiere at the Toronto Film Festival, and I know it played very, very well.
Yes, we screened at Toronto, and afterwards we introduced the gentleman who had come over from South Africa that the film tells the story of his life.
Patrick Chamuso.
Patrick Chamuso. And as the credits started to roll, the spotlight went on to the first balcony, and there was Patrick Chamuso himself, gazing out on a wildly enthusiastic audience, I think, who were first of all stunned by the ending to realize that it was a real story, but then there he is in flesh and blood. You know, I think they were very touched to see him there.
Derek Luke plays the real Patrick, and Derek Luke is a good actor.
Very good actor.
But I don't see it, huh?
It's my camera, boss.
Whose car is die? Whose car is this?
My car, boss.
Patrick. Where are you going, Patrick?
I'm going home, boss.
Where do you get the money for this nice car and that nice camera?
No, boss, I have a job. I'm a foreman, boss. I work at Secunda.
It's all the searching.
He's played a number of real characters in his career. Maybe this was the hardest, because now, of course, he had to go all the way from Jersey to Los Angeles and then further back to Africa, an African-American man who's never been to Africa before. And so he came across to South Africa about 7 weeks before we started shooting, and his first port of call was to go up to the valley where the gentleman that he would play lives, and the two of them spent about 3 days together And it was wonderful to see them together because on the one hand, the real man was trying to impress himself in a way upon the actor, and the actor was trying to bond, to draw the essence of the man.
Kind of absorb
everything about him.
Are you excited to come to South Africa?
I'm excited
I
to
even
meet
sent
you.
my wife to come and meet you. Do you think you will make something?
Oh, big time.
But it didn't end there. I mean, Patrick Tremuso gave Derek his cell phone number. And often during the shoot I would say, "Where's Derek? He's not here." He'd be over in the corner phoning up Patrick just before he was to play a scene from the man's life, just sort of asking him, you know, what did you do here? What did you do there? What did you feel like? And Patrick also came to the set several times to see his life being reenacted. And occasionally he actually stepped in, did my job for me. I remember once there was a scene at an oil refinery. The workers who are coming to work are being searched by guards. Patrick wasn't quite happy with the way that the young South Africans of 2005 were searching the workers. He said, no, that's not how we did it back in 1980. And so he jumped in and demonstrated.
No, man. When you open the bag, there's nothing there, and then you leave it.
And in fact, when people go and see the movie, if they look carefully in that very scene where the guards are searching the workers as they come to work at this oil refinery, if you look to Derek Luke playing Patrick Tremuso and then go forwards with your eyes, the man in front of him is the real Patrick Tremuso.
Oh,
so
well.
on screen is Patrick Tremuso and Derek playing Patrick.
Well, that's very good. Now, Derek Luke's nemesis in the film, of course, is played by Tim Robbins.
Tim Robbins' character he plays is called Nick Voss. He's a combination of more than one person from the real Patrick Tremuso's life. He plays a security branch policeman who pursues Patrick.
I want to know who you are.
I told you 100 times. I'm innocent. I am not ANC.
How many men in your maintenance team?
4 men and 2 other men.
You, Zuka September, Johnny Paliso. Who collects the vehicles? Who signs for the keys?
4 men on the shift.
That night, that would be you.
I told you. I wasn't there. I was sick.
You see a doctor?
Yes.
Got a sick note?
Yes. Yes.
The doctor's note was forged, Patrick. We know that.
Tim was on a journey. I think he was interested in the history of South Africa, and I think that he found this role very challenging. But also, I guess he wanted to investigate this particular character. Like all policemen, a man who was signed on to serve and protect. I don't think I've ever met a policeman who didn't sign on to do good. Yes. But of course, the complication is it's 1980, it's South Africa, and this man must preserve a status quo and institutions that are by their very nature corrupt. There's a certain amount of injustice in the laws that he's protecting. So how does a man remain true to his basic core morality in that circumstance? And that's the character that Tim plays.
You have an interesting scene with him that shows that his moral compass is set the right way.
Yeah, when he's got his man, or thinks he's got his man, has all the evidence to convict him, to put him away, and he realizes that he's not guilty and releases him.
He didn't do it. I let him go.
He confessed. On time.
Confessed. To what? That he cut a hole in the fence? They got in with a key. You know that.
Look, he said he did it. Okay, that's good enough for me.
So we lie to get a conviction. We hang him. Or lock him in jail for the rest of his life for something he didn't do. Meantime, there's a terrorist loose on the ground. What the hell's the point in that?
And you know, Tim met probably almost 15 former members of the police security branch, which was a combination of like a CIA operation combined with a police force. They were fighting, in essence, a war to maintain equilibrium of South Africa. It was complicated because also this was the height of the Cold War. So you might remember, you saw the film, there's a lot of references to communism.
Yes, yes, exactly. They felt the communists were behind the...
Well, they were, in fact. The ANC, the African National Congress, many of the leaders of the ANC were, in fact, members of the South African Communist Party. That's well known, and that complicated this struggle. And it wasn't until the end of the Cold War when Mikhail Gorbachev capitulated and said, okay, it's over, communism doesn't work. It was only then that the UK and the US supported the ANC in their struggle for freedom in South Africa.
Yes. Let me ask how you, as a director, like to work with actors, and I sense that in Catch a Fire, these actors must have had different styles of their own.
I like to take responsibility up to a point for the performance, and the point is the day that they start. I like to prepare months in advance and then designing for them as much of a boot camp as they want to take part in and sign up for. Because what can be more important to a movie like this than allowing the actor access to material, to stimuli, to historical events, an understanding of history, of language, you know, very important because he's got to travel so far.
Right.
So, you know, I design preparation for an actor. The actor can reject it, not take part in it, whatever they want. But I like to feel that on the first day, that I've given them all the opportunity to submerge themselves in that character and become that person.
Right.
And then it's up to them. You know, you're gonna guide them. But I do believe in the John Huston method of directing also, which is that the best direction is to say nothing. Let them do it, and you'll speak when something's going wrong. But otherwise, let's just get on with it. And now we're in another world. We're in another place. We are other people, and we've got to absolutely give ourselves up to that reality.
Now, just in case anyone watching us thinks that this is a small, character-driven movie, I
hope it is.
well, I mean, in its way it is, but it's more than that.
Of course, this is the story of a peace-loving family man, completely apolitical despite the turmoil that's all around him, determined just to live a quiet life until he's forced by extreme circumstances to say, hey, I've had enough. If I can do anything to change this system, no matter what it costs me, if I can work towards giving my family a future, I don't care what happens to me, I'll do it.
So you've made such a variety of films over a long period of years.
Well, I've had 3 lives. I started making films in Australia, where I was born, back in the late 70s, at a time with huge government support. What we call the new wave emerged in the late 60s and early 70s. Bruce Beresford, Peter Weir, many other fine directors.
Right.
And during those early days, we had this marvelous relationship with our Australian audience. We could make the film so cheaply for a couple of $100,000, and we could expect to return that money in Australia alone. We never expected we'd sell our films outside the country, and most of all, we never expected that we'd ever work outside Australia.
And lo and behold, here you are.
Here I am.
Here you are. I mean, a Hollywood auteur on everyone's list of really, I mean, you know, immodest as you are, but certainly a long list, but a list of such varied kinds of films. I mean, The Quiet American, which is
well, that was the third period. The first period was making films in Australia. I was lucky enough to make Dead Calm, which sort of spoke an international film language. It was a thriller, and I'd just turned 40. The phone was ringing, and it was people from Los Angeles with scripts. So I uprooted my 2 daughters and wife and moved to Los Angeles. And the next thing I knew, I was lucky enough to be directing Harrison Ford, who also has been one of the great teachers in my life, I might add.
Tell me about that.
You know, Harrison has such an intellect for him. You know, he's so collaborative. He doesn't drown you with ideas, very polite. But, you know, there's been more than a half dozen occasions where in the middle of shooting a scene, Harrison will just very, very quietly, almost in a whisper, make the perfect suggestion. You know, I think it would be a good time for some slow motion. Or, you know what, I look better when I think that shot might work better if I'm looking straight down the lens. Stuff like that.
But that's interesting, because there are a lot of directors who would not pay attention to that, or who would even be unhappy with the suggestion from an actor that, you know.
Well, you know, I usually find that nobody knows the character that they're playing better than the actor. And certainly Harrison also, in addition to that, had a wonderful, when I was working with him, just had a wonderful relationship with the camera and with his audience.
Right. When you were making Catch a Fire, was there a video crew covering you making the film?
Yes, yes, of course. Yeah, not so much covering me as covering the far more interesting story of the transformation of 2 American actors into South Africans. And one of the most interesting scenes in that movie about the process of acting is the day that Derek Luke visited Robben Island, the infamous prison. Derek went there because the character that he plays in the movie also spent 10 years on Robben Island. And the key for Derek was when he went into the maximum security section of that prison. When he went down to one particular cell, and when he got in, he realized that it was, for almost a quarter of a century, the cell occupied by Nelson Mandela. And I think just sitting there in that cell, that was the time that Derek made the greatest leap in terms of finding the essence of the character that he was portraying, like the real thing.
What aspect of filmmaking do you enjoy most?
Well, I guess I must say that, and particularly given that I've made films all over the world, that I'd have to admit that the location survey has to be the best part for me.
You mean just
of
going
making
out and
films.
scouting?
Yeah, going out and scouting, finding the locations, because I have made some films in exotic places. Right. The second most exciting part, which comes around the same time, but usually just a little bit before, would be the research stage. With Harrison going to the CIA, being taken into the inner workings of that organization. In the case of The Quiet American, going with Michael Caine to the back streets of Saigon, now called Ho Chi Minh City, talking to people about what it was like back in the 1950s. In South Africa, with a whole host of co-directors or assistant directors drawn from the period, investigating what happened back then, the life that people were leading and so on. Absolutely wonderful time, because you're on this investigation. The film is going to totally depend on how open you are, but you don't have to say action and cut every 15 minutes. Right. So those 2 aspects. And finally, the last part would be that wonderful period in post-production, when the movie that you know is just stuck together by sticky tape. You know all the tricks that have put this film together, all the heartache, all the tears, all the sweat, and suddenly you add the music, and the movie starts to take on and become another world. You know, there it is, and you sit and watch it. That period, late in post-production, when the whole thing seems to be what you never thought it would be. You know, a convincing world with characters that you've helped to create, performances that actually people take seriously, a story that seems to connect with people, all of those things. That's a wonderful, wonderful time when you realize that maybe for some people it works.
I think so. Let me ask you, just to sort of conclude our conversation today about Catch a Fire, you have lots and lots of films you could make. I assume you have lots of screenplays that people send you, lots of things, lots of ideas of your own. Tell me, why did you want to make this film?
Well, you know, I made a film called Rabbit Proof Fence.
Yes, yes.
Which was the story of three unlikely heroines, three little Aboriginal children who had run away from a retraining centre, a centre where they had been sent to be trained to be white people, but they were black Australians. And it was a story that was set in a particular time in a particular place. But it was a story that I found when the film was distributed and bought for distribution all around the world, was a story that people in Brazil, in Japan, in America, in the UK, in France, everyone could relate to the story, could take it on, could own the story. And when I read Catch a Fire, I thought, here's another story just like that. A seemingly ordinary person whose life story can be an inspiration. As the real man said, I had nowhere else to go but up. And this is exactly where we got the title from, Catch a Fire. He said something was ignited, something was lit inside me, way down here. And in order to be a man, to regain my humanity, I had to decide that I was going to do something about this.
I will make this right. I promise I will make this right.
So it's a story of one man, but in another way, it's a story of one marvelous country. Now, you said that I have the power to make films. Well, I don't, actually. It's up to the actors. The actors give us the power, and in this case, it was Tim Robbins who, when he signed on, allowed the film to be made. But more particularly, it was working title. Those two men, Eric Fellner and Tim Bevan, who have made so many successful films in Britain, that they have earned the right to be able to say, I want this film to be made. They so much wanted to get Catch a Fire on the screen.
Yes.
And without them, and without Tim Robbins, I'm sorry to say, but I wouldn't have been able to make the movie.
Right. Now, you also have behind the scenes Anthony Minghella as a producer, and
yes,
Sidney
wow.
Pollack, the executive producer.
What a team, huh? We've got Minghella in one corner, Sidney Pollack in the other, Anthony, who's always there with helpful suggestions, Sidney, who can't help but be helpful because he's just, he's so detail-oriented.
Right, right.
You know, I'd be receiving notes from him, you know, at all hours of the night, wherever he was in the world and wherever I was. Yes. He was always in contact.
Right. But indeed, you had a great team behind you, and they had you up front there leading the team. And
they did, but you know, the greatest team that I had were the South Africans who were working with me. Here is a story about a white South African played by Tim Robbins and a black South African played by Derek Luke. And I am a white Australian from my experience. It's not my history, but I had around me people who were actually there. And I must say that often it was a case of the director getting out of the way and allowing people who really knew this story inside and out, who were there when it happened. I always had a South African who had lived the scene. This was a movie that was a privilege to make. It is the kind of story that you know, doesn't often get made, and I must admit that I did have a great team around me, and without them, I don't think there wouldn't have been any reality up there on the screen.
Indeed, but the director gets the blame or the credit, so let's give you the credit. Let's give you the credit for this.
Well, you know, I think that a director is in some ways a ringmaster. When you point your finger and say, put the spotlight on him or her, the timing is essential. But when there's a pause, you've got to point the other way and bring on the drum roll. And the timing of the drum roll, the timing of the spotlight of preeminent importance. But you are, in a way, the storyteller, but it's the other people who you're allowing to shine.
And that's what you have done in Catch a Fire. Thanks to Phillip Noyce for being here to talk to us today about Catch a Fire. I'm Martin Grove, and this is Hollywood Update.
Up, 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 you up.
My father always told me, you must find happiness where you can. These were bad times in my country, but I had a good job and a beautiful family.
His family, his work, that's Patrick's life.
Oh, wow. What's that?
Go. Go! We have to ask your husband some questions.
What are you doing?
I've done nothing wrong.
Let it go! Daddy!
25 million blacks, 3 million white people. We're the ones under attack. Where were you that night, Patrick?
I told you 100 times. I am not a terrorist.
Precious, I am talking to you. Release my wife.
He didn't do it. I let him go.
I will make this right. I promise I will make this right.
Once you decide to fight back, everything is different. You may never see your family again.
My family was punished for nothing. So let it be for something now.
Are you ready to die? Yes, Commander.
I needed to leave, so one day I could look her in the eyes and say, I have tried to change these things.
Are you ready to die? Yes, Commander. Yes, Commander.
When did these come in? Do you still want to go on?
I want to go on.
Where is he? Where does he sleep at night? Block every road in every direction. You had a good life. Now you've thrown it all away.
My children, when they speak of their father, they will say he was a man who stood up for what was right. A man who said, I must do something now. What will your children say about you?
For streaming video segments about today's films, please visit us on the web at www.updatehollywood.com. Thanks for joining me today here on Hollywood Update. I'm Martin Grove.
Martin Grove's wardrobe provided by Carroll & Company, Beverly Hills and Pasadena.